I never thought I'd be telling this story. Honestly, if someone had told me a year ago that my life would turn upside down because of my husband's friend, I would have laughed it off. We all have that one couple in our lives, your partner's buddy and his wife or girlfriend, that you hang out with often. Double dates, birthdays, casual barbecues. That's how it started for us. They were over all the time. We shared drinks, stories, laughter, trust. But looking back now, I wonder if I missed the signs. Or maybe I just didn't want to see them. Everything seemed normal, on the surface. My husband and I had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing major. We were building a life together. Bills, work, routines, planning for the future. His friend, let's call him Chris, was always around. Funny, charming, and honestly, a little too comfortable in our home. But I didn't read too much into it. I mean, this was someone my husband had known since college. He was like family, or so I thought. The first real shift happened so subtly, I almost missed it. A weird glance across the room. A text message that didn't make sense. Something in my gut started whispering that something wasn't right. You know that feeling when everything seems normal, but deep down, you feel a storm building? That was me. I tried brushing it off. I told myself I was being paranoid. Overthinking. Making something out of nothing. But it kept gnawing at me. Then one night, my husband came home later than usual. He said he was out with Chris. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? But something in his voice was off. Not the words, but the silence between them. Like he was rehearsing it too perfectly. Still, I let it go. You don't just stop trusting your partner overnight, until something forces you to. What hit me next? I still struggle to explain. It was a regular Saturday morning. Sunlight pouring through the windows, coffee brewing, our dog scratching at the back door. I had no idea that within minutes, my entire reality would shatter. I picked up my husband's phone to check a recipe I'd sent him a while back. I wasn't snooping. I had no reason to. But there it was. A message thread that wasn't supposed to be there. Not with Chris, but someone else. Someone I never expected to be involved. I froze. My fingers shaking, my heart pounding in my ears. The words I saw didn't make sense at first. It felt like reading a script from a bad drama. But it was real. And it wasn't just the messages, it was the tone. The intimacy. The lies. I didn't even realize I was crying until a tear hit the screen. I couldn't look away. I didn't want to believe it, but every word confirmed what my gut had been screaming for weeks. This wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal with someone we both trusted. And then came the worst part, the confrontation. The look on his face when he realized I knew. Not guilt. Not regret. Just silence. That's what broke me. The silence. That and what he said next. But I'll get to that in a minute. Because what happened after that moment changed everything. Not just my relationship. Not just my marriage. But the way I saw love, trust, and friendship. And if you think this is where the story ends, you're wrong. This is only the beginning. I just stood there, holding the phone, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he just sat down at the edge of the couch like the weight of it all had suddenly crashed onto him. I kept asking, how long has this been going on, but he wouldn't answer. That silence said more than words ever could. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shake him until the truth came spilling out, but I couldn't move. I felt like I was watching a scene unfold from someone else's life. Eventually, he whispered, "It wasn't supposed to happen." That sentence stuck with me. Not it didn't happen, but it wasn't supposed to. That's when I realized, he wasn't just sorry I found out. He was sorry it had gotten messy. That hit me harder than anything else. For days, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were racing in circles, trying to connect the dots. Every memory with Chris suddenly felt different. Like I had to replay every conversation, every laugh, every moment we shared as a group. And it wasn't just the betrayal, it was who it involved. Someone I had welcomed into my home. Someone I confided in. Someone I thought of as family. The crazy part? I had trusted Chris more than most people. He was the kind of person who could charm a whole room without even trying. He always knew what to say, always made people feel like they mattered. Even when my husband and I were having our usual arguments, Chris was the one who gave advice, told me to hang in there, that all couples go through rough patches. Now it felt like every word was calculated. Every kind gesture had a hidden motive. But here's the twist. The messages on the phone, they weren't even between my husband and Chris's wife. That's what I initially thought. No, they were between Chris and me. Or at least, that's what he wanted it to look like. The messages were screenshots. Edited. Out of context. Sent to my husband as proof that I was the one being unfaithful. At first, it didn't make sense. Why would Chris do that? What did he have to gain by breaking us apart? But then I started noticing little things I'd missed before. The way Chris had gotten closer to me in the months leading up to this. The compliments that felt harmless at the time. The subtle digs he'd make about my husband, masked as jokes. It was like he'd been planting seeds for a while, just waiting for the right moment to twist everything around. My husband had fallen for it. Whether it was because he already had his doubts, or because he trusted Chris more than he trusted me, I don't know. But he believed the lies. And he didn't come to me first. He didn't ask questions. He just pulled away. Quietly. Emotionally. Until the distance between us felt like a canyon. I'd been blaming our arguments on stress, work, life. But now I saw it clearly. He'd already chosen a side. That realization broke something in me. Not just the betrayal from my husband, but the manipulation from someone who was supposed to be a friend. I kept wondering, was this planned? Or did it just spiral out of control? Did Chris really want me? Or was this just about power, about seeing if he could ruin us? I didn't have those answers yet. All I knew was that everything around me suddenly felt like a lie. And deep down, I had a feeling the worst part of the story hadn't even happened yet. After that night, things between my husband and me were never the same. We lived in the same house, shared the same space, but it felt like we were just two strangers passing each other in a cold, quiet fog. He didn't ask me for the truth. He didn't offer explanations. And honestly, that silence, that lack of effort, was its own kind of heartbreak. It was like he'd already made up his mind about me, based on something a so-called friend had said. And I kept thinking, if he really knew me, if he really loved me, wouldn't he have fought to find the truth? I tried confronting Chris. I texted him. Called him. No response. The same man who used to reply in minutes was suddenly a ghost. That only made things feel worse. Like maybe he had something to hide. I even reached out to his girlfriend, someone I barely knew but had always been kind to. She didn't seem surprised when I asked if anything weird had been going on. In fact, she got quiet. Like she knew something too. She didn't say much, just told me, be careful who you trust. And that stuck with me. That's when I started digging. I went through old photos, old group chats, anything that could point to what had really been going on. And slowly, a pattern started to form. Chris had done this before. Not exactly the same way, but there were other friendships he'd wrecked, other stories that didn't sit right. It was like he thrived on creating chaos around him, like he needed control over other people's lives to feel important. And now I wondered if my husband was just another one of his pawns. But the question that kept me up at night was, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Was it something I said, or did he just see something in my life he wanted for himself? Maybe it wasn't even about me. Maybe it was about breaking down the one stable thing he didn't have, our marriage. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how vulnerable we'd already been. The fights, the distance, the little cracks in our relationship. Maybe Chris didn't create the mess, maybe he just stepped in and made it worse. But that doesn't make it hurt any less. I didn't just lose trust in my husband, I lost trust in everything around me. And what scared me most was the thought that maybe I wasn't done uncovering the lies. Maybe there was more waiting just beneath the surface. The tension in our house became unbearable. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was short, cold, like two people just getting through the motions. My husband still hadn't brought up the messages, and I was stuck in this confusing limbo, caught between proving my innocence and waiting for him to care enough to ask. But I couldn't keep living like that, second-guessing everything. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I started following the trail. Late one night, after he went to bed, I opened his laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to know. I had to see if there was more to the story. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his messages. Nothing stood out at first, just work, random chats. But then I saw a conversation with someone saved under a random name, and something about it felt off. I clicked, and everything changed. It wasn't just about me and Chris anymore. There were messages, photos, and even voice notes, some from weeks before that first text I found. My husband and Chris had been talking constantly. But what shocked me most was the tone. Chris wasn't just planting doubt, he was feeding it, encouraging it. Saying things like, "You deserve better," and "She's been shady for a while." He was fueling the fire. And my husband? He was listening. The betrayal hit in layers. It wasn't just my husband turning his back on me, it was that he let someone else rewrite the story of our marriage. And now I couldn't tell if he truly believed I'd done something wrong or if he needed an excuse to give up. Either way, the damage was already done. I felt like I was being pulled under by everything I'd uncovered, and just when I thought I couldn't take any more, something happened that pushed it all to the edge. I got a message from an unknown number. And what it said made my heart drop. The message was short. Just a single sentence, "You're not the only one he's lied to." My chest tightened. I stared at the screen, trying to figure out if it was some kind of prank. But before I could even respond, another message came through, a photo. Blurry, but clearly recent. It was Chris. And he wasn't alone. He was sitting at some outdoor cafe, leaning in close to a woman I'd never seen before. Their faces were way too familiar, way too close. And worst of all, my husband was there too. I felt sick. There was no way to explain that picture away. Not as a casual meeting. Not as coincidence. It wasn't just a betrayal, it felt like a setup. Like this whole thing had been staged from the start. I started wondering if I had ever actually known the truth about either of them. What if this had never been about me at all? And then another twist hit, one that knocked the air out of me. The unknown number messaged again, this time with a name. The woman in the photo? She used to date Chris. Years ago. And according to the sender, she was the one he couldn't let go of. But she moved on. Started a new life. Until recently, when Chris showed back up. With a plan. Suddenly, it all started making a sick kind of sense. Chris didn't just want to ruin my marriage, he wanted to break hers too. He was playing both sides. Pulling strings. Whispering lies to anyone who would listen. And my husband? He was tangled up in it, whether he knew the full story or not. My heart pounded in my ears as I stared at the messages, the photo, the chaos I hadn't seen coming. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling fast. And the worst part? I had no idea what was coming next. But I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I couldn't sit with it any longer. I printed the messages, the photos, all of it. I waited for my husband to come home, and when he walked through the door, I was already sitting at the table with everything laid out in front of me. For once, he didn't pretend. He just stood there, quiet, like he knew the truth had finally caught up to him. I told him everything, about the texts, the photo, the messages from the unknown number, and the woman in the cafe. His face changed. It wasn't guilt this time. It was shock. Not because he'd been caught, but because he hadn't known all of it either. That's when he finally admitted it. He'd started believing Chris long before the messages appeared. Chris had been planting stories in his head for months, feeding him lies about me, twisting every argument we had into something darker. But here's the real twist. That anonymous number? It wasn't some random person. It was her, the woman in the photo. Chris's ex. She'd figured out his game and had been tracking everything, waiting for the right time to warn me. She'd seen it happen before. I wasn't his first target, just the one who got closest to seeing through him. My husband looked broken, finally understanding how deep he'd been played. And me? I felt something shift. Not just the weight of betrayal lifting, but clarity. I'd spent so long trying to hold on to something that was already gone. The real twist wasn't about Chris or the lies. It was that I had the strength to walk away, and they never saw that coming. After that night, everything changed. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stood up, looked at the man I once loved, and told him the truth. This marriage wasn't worth saving if trust could be so easily replaced with suspicion. He tried to apologize, said he'd been confused, manipulated, that he didn't know what to believe. But that was the problem. He chose to believe a lie over his own wife. I moved out within the week. It wasn't easy. The house, the memories, even the quiet routines we used to share, it all felt like a strange dream I had finally woken up from. Chris disappeared after everything came to light. Turns out, once people started comparing stories, his lies began to unravel fast. The damage he caused caught up to him. And the woman who warned me? We actually met in person. Talking to her helped me heal more than I expected. We both came out stronger from the chaos he created. Looking back, I don't regret learning the truth, even though it hurt. Because sometimes, betrayal doesn't just reveal who someone else is. It shows you who you are. And I learned that I'm someone who can survive the storm. Someone who can let go of people who don't value honesty and loyalty. If you're watching this and going through something similar, please hear me when I say, you're not crazy for trusting, and you're not weak for walking away. You deserve peace, truth, and love that doesn't make you question your worth. This wasn't the ending I expected, but maybe it was the one I needed.